Good evening. We are in the middle of chapter 21 exercises. We got through number 6 in the workbook, and tonight we're going to start with number 7 on page 89. It's translation of a portion of John 2:25. I think I'll do this one myself, but autos, you probably remember that from when we were way back studying the pronouns. This is he is the basic translation, but we don't need the autos in this verse, and many times we don't. It's there for emphasis, if anything else. But the verb aginosken, which is in the imperfect, third singular, that contains the pronoun in it. So the way I did it was for, that second word gar is postpositive, for he himself knew. Well, literally, if you translate the imperfect as a continuous action in past time, was knowing. He himself was knowing. But I suggested to translate it knew. Either way, the meaning of the verb is that the word knew would be a translation of the aorist tense, which is undefined aspect. But was knowing has the idea that he knew it for some time, and it was continuous that he knew it. And T, hein and to anthropo. T is the indefinite pronoun what. This is accusative singular neuter. He knew what thing. Was, ein is the imperfect of eimi, what was in mankind is how I translated it. You probably know the rest of the verse. Jesus was not committing himself to these people because he knew what was in man. Now, I put a note here in my book that this is the same reasoning that we saw in exercise 5, footnote 2, where the verb was in the imperfect, talking about Jesus' love for the family of Martha, Mary, and Zacharias. Was that?
No, Lazarus.
Lazarus, not Zacharias. Yeah. The question that was asked in that footnote was, why is the verb in this tense, imperfect, was loving? My thought was that Jesus had been loving this family for a period of time. It was not a new relationship. That was my thought about why it was in the imperfect. And I'm suggesting that it's the same reasoning in number 7. It wasn't a new knowledge that Jesus had about what was in mankind. He had been knowing and was knowing what was in man. Does that make any sense to you about the imperfect?
Yeah, I don't think that I would, with verbs like this, I don't think that I would, these are verbs that I don't think I really would make a distinction in that.
Okay.
Because I don't see something like knowledge. Unless it's somehow specified, I wouldn't expect knowledge to be a thing that's really transitory in this case. Because
transitory means temporary, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, like he knew. was knowing or knew. I mean, in either case, if you say it's a completed action, then the implication would be that he only knew it for a while. Unless you say he was knowing, well, it
No,
was a continuing action.
I'm not
But
talking about
I don't think there's any meaningful difference in the way we would understand that, really.
well, I understand what you're saying, but I think there can be a distinction, because I'm not talking about a knowledge that terminates,
Mm-hmm.
like if it was forgotten. No, that's not what it's. But it also was not a knowledge that just happened. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Jesus didn't suddenly know.
Yeah, I understand, but I don't think there's any way of the simple use of the verb doesn't convey a lot about that, is
True, it
what I'm saying.
doesn't.
It just doesn't really tell us about.
But most translations use the word "new" instead
Yeah,
of "was known."
that's right. They don't translate it as was knowing. They say knew. And they don't say was being. I mean, you didn't even do that, but isn't that actually the same tense? And
Was
was being, isn't that actually the
right.
imperfect tense?
Well, there is no
Well,
aorist of "ame," so they have to use "ain."
well, okay, that's fine. But in any case, I just don't think there's a lot of distinction in the real meaning. I don't think there's a way to make sense out of it in because the whole context of the scriptures, this is a thing that he knew. It that he always knew.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
the whole context of the scriptures. This is a thing he continuously knew.
Yeah, that's true of Jesus, but it's not. If you use that verb about a man, you wouldn't. You
Well, I
couldn't
would
say that
have
he
to
always
say
knew.
the statement very differently. I would have to say that Dave knew what was in those men. And I'd have to specify, I couldn't say in man in general.
No.
And if I say something like that in man in general, ooh, that's a whole new. And now I would maybe have to talk about a time frame that Dave knew at that moment what was in mankind.
Okay. Well.
See that now I have to really get if I'm taught if I'm going to really make it important as to how to understand the time aspect, I'm going to have to do something to make it
Yeah, you have
specific.
to explain it.
Otherwise, it's ambiguous.
Yeah. But let's take it out of the realm of knowing what's in a man, and knowing some fact. I mean, to know what's in a man is impossible for us to ascertain
Well, I
because
knew the
we
depth of
don't.
the river, but I wouldn't stop knowing the depth of the river. And it doesn't tell me if I say I knew the depth of the river, it doesn't tell me when I found that out. It just
No.
says at that moment I knew what it was, and it doesn't tell me I forgot. You see,
Yeah,
and
that's
if I
what
say
they.
I was knowing the depth of the river, it doesn't add anything. It doesn't change that fact.
Maybe not if you. Did we lose Drew?
I don't know, Drew? Maybe.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
we
that's
could.
okay. You keep going because I'm going to see
Yeah,
if there's something I need to do. I mean, it's all fine. I don't think there's a lot of,
but
I just don't.
the Greek tense is there for a reason, and I think we can. Maybe not in this example, but in some of the other uses, we can.
Okay, looks like he's back.
Are you back with us, Drew?
Hello, sorry.
Hi.
My
I don't
Zoom
know what
just
happened.
crashed.
So
Okay.
you're okay now.
Yeah, we're good now.
Do you want to give any thoughts from your perspective on the imperfect that we've been talking about?
Um, the basic division between the two, between the perfect and imperfect actions makes sense. I think there's some concepts in English where we don't our division between those two ideas are imperfect because we just don't use
Yeah.
that verb in one or the other. I think knowing is one of those.
Perhaps it is, yeah. With that
Because I'm
verb.
trying to think if Well, so a very common expression, I knew that.
Mhm.
I'm not actually saying I don't know that now. It's saying I knew that before you told it to me, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
I, right, like we only use it in kind of that imperfect sense. I'm trying to think of a situation where we use it as like a completed action. I
Um,
I can't think of one, but that's all
uh,
yeah.
Well, maybe maybe a simpler case with a different verb. I drove the car from
Hmm.
Tallahassee to Atlanta,
mhm.
and that gives a specific time frame in which I was driving the car. I was driving the car yesterday,
Mhm.
and I'm not telling you where it was or any time frame or anything. I was just doing it.
It was continuous.
And that's how we use
Mhm.
this in English. And in both of those cases, it's something that happened in the past. But the imperfect is not completed. I'm not telling you an exact time frame.
Right.
But we call the one that we call simple, I think that in the Greek here, we're calling
Undefined.
undefined,
Yeah.
which
Mm.
seems sort of almost the opposite of how we think of it in English. Because the example I just gave is how I would use that simple past tense of drove would have bounds on it. And rather than saying it's undefined, it's really actually more defined. Whereas the was driving is sort of leaving it out there. I don't really tell you when it was happening.
Okay. I need to mention something because Drew wasn't here when we talked about it, I don't think. The terminology that Mounts is using in this fourth edition of the book is different from what he used to use in the previous editions. And I learned it with the older terminology, and I still prefer it. And I'm trying to not use terms like perfective and imperfective.
Right. That's not helpful.
The way I learned it, which I'm going to ask you to join me in this, is there's different terms too that we can use that are sort of synonymous. The simple action is what we also call the undefined aspect. I should use that word. Aspect is different than time.
Mhm.
Aspect is the kind of action. Um, it's connected to and related to the time element, but it's different. And the Greek often emphasizes aspect more than time of the action. Let me make sure I get the right terminology. It's a little bit awkward sometimes.
I think we started to be talking about this when I
Yes.
left.
Yeah. Well,
Because
in
that was we started talking about this in 18, right?
I think we did.
Okay.
In the review that I'm hoping we can do next week, chapters 15 through 20, there's one exercise here. How do you form the following English tenses with the verb to eat? Number 6. He's asking, he's using the term, well, he got it the way that I wanted. He uses continuous, and that's the older term, which I think is the way we ought to consider it
For the imperfect.
for the imperfect.
Okay.
No, that's present active. Continuous. Progressive is another term that means the same as continuous, but undefined in the B part of that is also what we call simple.
Where are you looking?
I'm in the workbook page. Let's see the page. Oh, page 84, second page of the handout there. Okay, let me go back. The question he asks, how do you form the following English tenses with the verb eat? The A part of that is the present active continuous. And another term equivalent to continuous is progressive.
Yeah, we
Now,
are eating. Yeah,
That's
I
the
am.
older term, but and that's what I want us to use. And the way to form that is by adding the helping verb am, are, and is plus the present participle. Example, I am eating.
You have I am eaten. I'm just.
No,
Oh, oh yeah, that's
a
right.
bit-
Passive tense.
That's a
Yeah, yes,
passive.
I am eaten. The passive tense.
Yeah.
You're right. I am eaten. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep. Okay. That's a terrible thing to say.
yeah. I am eaten by mosquitoes.
I guess yes. That's true.
I think that might be in a Shakespeare play.
Really? That's
Okay.
I
excellent.
am slain,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes.
right?
Well, that's really not the.
Okay, good. No, but I don't have a problem with it, Carl.
Oh, there it is.
I'm not complaining.
Okay. On the first page of that handout, he's got three terms: imperfective aspect,
Oh, I see.
imperfective aspect, and punctiliar aspect. I would prefer to use, instead of imperfective, the continuous aspect.
I'm beginning to see maybe why he called it imperfective, because
Yeah,
it
it's-
matches the imperfect tense.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
But
beginning to see that.
Imperfective refers to the aspect, imperfect refers to the tense.
Well,
And then perfective means completed, but it's undefined as related to aspect. It doesn't tell you anything more than that it was done, completed. Doesn't tell you whether it took a long time or it was intermittent or
right.
anything like that. It's an undefined aspect. And looking forward to the next chapter 22, which is the aorist tense. The word aorist comes from the alpha, which is a negation, and horizo, which is the verb meaning, it's where we get our word horizon, which is a defined line. But aorist means undefined.
So that's the simple past tense.
Yeah. I think the verb horizo means to set a boundary.
So it's fine. It's fine.
So
Who made up the names for these tenses?
the Greeks, I believe.
Is this where we got them
I
from?
mean, yeah.
Because
well, that
it would be, okay. I guess that's fine that we're using Greek words for them,
It's
because
English translation of a Greek word.
fair enough. It's just that the English words we use for them. I mean, yes, we have a tense called imperfect, but it's an aspect also of other tenses, is it not? It's a whole tense,
Yeah.
but it's an aspect. This is what's I'm sorry, the way we use these words is really not simple.
No, it's not.
You're
It's a
saying
new
it's
way
an
of
aspect,
thinking.
but we have it called out as a tense.
Yeah.
Right?
There is another tense called the perfect tense.
Yes, and
And
so
perfect and imperfect relate to completedness.
right. But then we have the aorist, and
which
then
is
did we not?
undefined.
And then we had the active indicative,
Well,
which
that's not a tense. That's a voice and a mood.
the present. What was it?
Present
The
tense
The present tense.
and the future tense.
But we're told that the present tense the present tense, he said, should also be understood as both voices, as both
not voices, but both two different
both
aspects.
two
Yeah.
different aspects.
Yeah, either the undefined
So why?
or the
Yeah,
continuous.
it's all it's fine. I don't know why we're talking about. All right, it's okay.
Okay,
I'm
let's go
I'm
forward.
following it. It's
Yeah.
all right. I'm just noting that we use a word like continuous and a word like undefined when in the English we don't really use it that way. It's a bit on it's and you explained why the words are used the way they are, but in the usage, the simple past is everything but undefined. It is a completed action that took place in the usage that we do with most verbs, action type verbs. It is completely done. And the thing we're calling continuous is something that happened without us really necessarily knowing the boundaries. They might be defined, but they might not be. It really has nothing to do with that.
Okay,
I mean, I gotta make sure I'm understanding this right, because if I drove the car from here to there, I didn't tell you how long it took. You're right. I didn't tell you any of these other things, but it took place in the past and it was completed in the past. And if I say I was driving the car, I could add more to it, but I haven't yet told you anything about it, except that um, it also may have completed in the past. I haven't said otherwise.
no, but it's just emphasizing the fact that it was going on.
It
In the
was
past.
happening over, it's somehow significant
Yeah.
that it took more than a millisecond.
Yeah, right. That's the difference between punctiliar and imperfect. Punctiliar is a point action,
Yeah. And
like the verb hit.
I think what I observe is that in most cases, the distinction between these is not really significant in understanding anything. In most cases, we're not saying anything for which these things have any actual meaning. If I said I was driving my car from Tallahassee to Atlanta, that doesn't mean anything different than saying I drove my car from Tallahassee to Atlanta. There is no actual semantic difference.
Okay.
And
I'll
I
grant
think
you that,
that's,
maybe.
and I think that, well, my question is, I don't think that in most of the Greek statements, there's any actual difference either. We came across when we talked about last week, one of these, there was a difference, and I was really thankful for looking at that because we could see how it really mattered. Which one was that? That was, it made a difference in the order of events, and that was really interesting.
Was it
Yeah, number
number
6.
four?
It was number 6.
Number 6?
And he was asking him, is
What is your name?
what is your name? Because it really is in a context of where he walks up to him and says, basically, get out of the man. And then it says, well, he was asking his name, and the answer was, and you realize that he wouldn't have asked him his name after he had ordered him to get out. And so what we really have in this situation is this continuous tense is used after the writer made the statement of what actually happened later.
Okay.
And then in this use of this tense really adds to the meaning because we can understand the events more clearly. A casual reading of it doesn't worry, but actually it keeps the order right.
I've noticed in a lot of the standard translations we use, they don't make a distinction
No, they
between
don't.
imperfect and
And the order is lost,
yeah.
actually. And if you read it carefully, you look at that and think, well, that order seems weird. But the
Yeah.
Greek actually had the order.
Well, let's keep
Yeah.
alert to finer distinction of the imperfect and ask if it makes a difference. Okay.
I know we
Yes.
want to move on real quick. If this is helpful, that the undefined started making sense to me when the simple tense without the undefined aspect is the basic form of the verb, right?
The
And so it's
default
undefined in that it doesn't have any extra information. We don't add a continuous, right? So the distinction between it's completed or not completed is maybe misleading. It's more like it's simple. We don't have a whole lot of information. Then we could add a continuous, or we could add a punctiliar.
Okay.
And then I think the semantic difference between I drove yesterday and I was driving is insignificant until, like in number 6, we start adding more information around
Right.
it, and it sets up different potentials for us to relate that information to other information.
Well,
Yes.
well said.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate the help with what you just did. Let's go on to number 8, if you don't mind. Aerotone. Do you remember the lexical form of that verb and what it means? Aerotao. It's a contract verb. It's an alpha contract.
Yeah. Okay.
We have 3 different categories of contract verbs. It's a contract verb is one whose stem ends in either an alpha, epsilon, or omicron. And this is it's erotao. It's an alpha contract. And when the omicron the omicron of the connecting vowel is next to the alpha of the stem of that verb, they contract and become an omega. And you also have the epsilon, which is the augment for the imperfect. So this is the imperfect and active indicative third person plural. Now, there's a peculiarity in the imperfect tense that the first singular and the third plural are identical. So you have to figure out what the subject is to be able to tell which one to use. This is third plural. So we're looking for a plural subject, which we have, hoi methetai. Now the verb means to ask. So they were asking.
Yeah. And
who was asking? The disciples of him, or his disciples, were asking. Autan is the direct object, asking him. And I supplied the word about the parable.
Right.
Okay, the parable he had just told them was the one about nothing outside a man can defile him, because they were accusing him of eating with unwashed hands.
Right.
Right, number 9.
You said the verb is erotone?
Yeah.
Erotone.
Erotao.
Erotao. What is the epsilon?
Oh, there's a preposition prefix to it.
Right.
Epi.
Epi. Why is that then change? What is that doing to it?
Okay. Epi is a preposition which, when it's prefixed to a verb, it becomes a compound verb, and very often it strengthens the verb. Epi has a basic
So they were
meaning
demanding of him, or asking strongly.
Strongly asking.
All right, because it didn't change the base meaning of the verb, and so I was wondering what was that doing. And then you've mentioned this to us before, and I forgot. I'm sorry.
I misspoke there too. Epsilon is not the augment. That's part of the preposition.
Right, the augment.
No, the eta is
eta,
lengthened.
Lengthened. Yeah. It's okay.
The epsilon of the erotao is lengthened to eta.
Well, I added to the discussion.
Why added?
I said I actually added to the discussion.
You certainly did.
Because I'm looking at this and going, what's the epi?
Yeah.
I forgot what it meant.
Epi, I like to think of the word epigenosko. Gnosko means I know. Epigenosko means I fully know, or I thoroughly know. I know full well, or something like that. It strengthens it. In a lot of verbs, when you prefix epi to it, it strengthens them.
Okay.
Like the verb to eat is estheo. And if you put epistheo, it means to devour.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to guess that's in one of those letters, something about devouring one
Yeah.
another.
If you bite and devour one another,
Right.
then
Right.
be careful you don't
It-
consume one another.
Yeah.
It might be that verb, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It comes to mind.
But you get the idea, I think, of strength. A
Okay.
preposition can strengthen, especially this preposition.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Go ahead, Drew.
Go ahead. I just had a quick question.
Okay, well, another preposition that strengthens a verb when it's prefixed to it is kata. To judge is krino. Kata krino means to condemn. And I'm doing a word study on that verb and its cognates.
Okay.
It's a very common verb. It's in this chapter's vocabulary. It's a liquid verb. Rather, it's a verb that has a liquid future. And it's combined with a lot of other prepositions to give shades of meaning. But it's got a pretty broad range of meanings, even the basic word krino. But katakrino means condemn. Not only decide that that a person is guilty, but carry out the sentence or the verdict and condemn, and even carry out the execution of it. Like a judge in a courtroom situation, the judge and jury go through all of their legal maneuverings to find out if the person is guilty or not. They determine a verdict, which could be they say he's guilty of the crime, and that's the judgment. It's also the condemnation. But then to carry out that guilty sentence, he would be either imprisoned or executed or something like that. So all that it has to do with krino and katakrino. There's
Okay.
other words that are used too. All right, number 9.
Oh, real quick.
Oh, your question. I'm sorry.
Why is auton and para sorry, it's been a bit para bowling both
Parabolane, yeah.
parabolane both in the accusative? So I know Mount Smith
Okay.
makes a footnote of that, but is that because the verb ask takes an accusative direct object and indirect object?
No, they're not. They're both. It's called a double accusative.
Okay.
This, if you were to diagram this sentence, say you have two direct objects.
Wait. You have you talking about Alton is so it's the disciples of
Ask him. No, that's not.
No,
No, that's autu, but
the disciples.
auton.
The
earlier.
disciples asked him.
Yes.
Right. The disciples of him asked him.
But there's no autu.
Oh,
It's not disciples of him here. It's just the disciples asked him.
I'm sorry, there is an autu, but
Where?
right after disciples.
I missed that.
Well, anyway, it's okay, Drew.
That's right.
I'm sorry. It didn't matter what
The
I'm saying.
disciples of him.
But you have basically asked him and so it is two accusatives.
Yeah. They asked a person.
They're both in
and a thing.
So both objects are accusative.
Oh.
Yes, they are. And it's called a double accusative construction.
It is usually paired person and thing like that?
Usually, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
We'll see other examples.
Yeah.
Number 9. You want to read together with me slowly?
Sure.
Kai meta tauta. Now, just careful with this one. Periepate.
Very epate.
Actually, the accent's on the second last syllable.
Periepate.
Periepate. But that epsilon after the iota is significant because that's the augment, the epsilon there.
Okay.
Peri is the preposition, and is the augment.
And okay. So in this is another compound. I mean, it's got a
Yes,
peri
it
in front of the pate,
is. Yeah.
and this does what to it?
Um,
Is
well, the word
or is this actually
peripateo is a lexical form. That is a compound verb. It's a preposition
okay?
and
And it means walking, but
walk.
but-
It's literally walking around. Peri means around.
okay.
But
And that you do the okay, but you put your verb augments in the front of the verbal part.
that's right.
All right.
Then ha Jesus ante Galilea ugar ethelen. No, I'm sorry, I didn't pronounce that right. Ethelen. Yeah. Ente Judea peripatane. Now there's that same
Yep.
verb, but this is an infinitive, to walk. Hati zaitun autan hoi Judaioi apaktenai. Another infinitive, to kill. And metatauta, that's meta with the accusative means after.
Right.
Tauta is accusative plural neuter, meaning these things. So, and after these things, the subject then, Jesus, and that periepate is an imperfect active indicative third singular, and it means was walking. In Galilee. Ugar Aethelen. Gar is postpositive for. U means not. Aethelen is the imperfect of thelo. And you might wonder why it's not an epsilon. Thelo is the lexical form, and that's not a vowel. So you use an epsilon when the verb starts with a consonant, but this is a lengthened form of epsilon. And the reason it's that way, I think he put it in the vocabulary of this chapter. Thelo, there it is, page 236. The lexical form is thelo, but the stem is ethela. There's an epsilon there. He's got a note here. Thelo drops its initial epsilon in the present and its final epsilon in the present and imperfect.
So the epsilon is there, but the augment's added.
Yeah. So it's invisible to us in the lexical form, but when you add an epsilon augment to the already epsilon already there, it becomes eta. That's why.
Sure.
Just
Okay.
it's crazy. Okay, so this is ethylene is imperfect, active, indicative, third singular. He was willing, but you've got the not there. See, he was not willing. In Judea, to walk in Judea. I think to walk around would be a good translation too, because you've got that peri prefix. Hati can be either that, since, or because. I think because is in order here. Because ezetun. Now, zeteo is the lexical form. That's an epsilon contract verb. And since the stem begins with a consonant, the augment is epsilon. Ezetun, that's imperfect, active, indicative, third plural. Because, and the subject is hoi eudioi, the Jews, they were seeking him to kill, seeking to kill him. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. You okay with it, Drew?
Yep. This makes
Okay.
sense.
Number 10. Hoi men un sunelthontes aeroton auton legantes, comma, curia. What is that ending epsilon there for? Remember the noun is kurios. What is that epsilon ending telling you?
I don't know.
Remember vocative?
Oh, yeah, I actually put a V in front of, on top of it. I forgot. I'm sorry. I wrote my notes. Yes,
Okay.
it's vocative. It
Yeah.
means they're addressing him.
Yeah, he is addressing him. Lord. Antokrano tuto apokathistanes. Apokathistanes. Yeah. Tain basilean to Israel. Okay, let's take a little time. We got a footnote, number 7. This is the same construction as the ha-de I talked about in BBG, but because it's plural, you translate they. Hoi is the nominative plural masculine form of ha, the article, the one, but this is plural, the ones, so
They.
convert that to they.
Okay.
Men is postpositive. You can leave that out in certain situations, which
So,
is what?
I mean, wouldn't it translate something like indeed?
You could, yes.
And I
I
just don't know
see
why
that.
you would leave it off.
Well,
Don't know why I read what it said, but
there's a lot of discussion in the lexicons about this. Men is used in conjunction with de in a correlative construction, correlative phrases. You might remember correlative use of kai.
okay.
Kai, ... kai. You got two kais, both this and that. That's correlative use of kai. You also have correlative use of men with de. You could think of it as
But what's
this.
happening here? I'm
Well,
sorry.
you don't have a correlative de.
So,
You just have the men. It can either be left untranslated or translated as indeed or really or
yeah.
something like that. It's
Okay.
not wrong to do that.
Okay. All right.
But
I
those
just
are
was checking,
common ones.
is that wrong for me
No,
to
it's
say?
not wrong,
Really or indeed?
but
Okay.
they indeed, you could say that.
Yeah,
Therefore,
sure. Okay.
or you could just leave it out. They, therefore, when they had come together. Now, arotone, this is our imperfect verb
Mhm.
of
It's
er-
okay.
erotao.
Without the epi.
This is third plural.
Yeah.
And they were asking
Yeah.
him.
Just like 8, but without the epi in front.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm. And this is a case, I think you could use that information he had in the advanced information. He gives 5 ways to translate the imperfect, and I suggest that this is where you can use the word began. Number 2 on page 238, it can also place emphasis on the beginning of the action. That's the ingressive or inceptive use of the imperfect tense. So you could say they were asking, or you could say they began asking. If you remember the situation, this is in Acts 1:6 after the resurrection, just before Jesus ascended, and he had been teaching them for 40 days about the kingdom. And then he took them out to the Mount of Olives and he ascended up into the clouds. But before he ascended, they started asking him, is this when you're going to restore the kingdom to Israel? So that's why I think he had been teaching about the kingdom, and they knew the Old Testament promised that there would be a kingdom when the Messiah would sit on the throne of David, reigning from Jerusalem. And so they had expected that even before, but that's what's happening here. They began asking him. I think I'm justified in using began there, saying, Curia, Lord. Now that's if, but footnote 8, A is used here to introduce a question and does not need to be translated. If is kind of out of place in our English translation. En to chrono, in the time, and then tuto, this, in the time this, or in this time, or at this time, I think is a little better. English wouldn't use in, but at.
Yeah, we don't use that preposition.
At this time, are you restoring Tain Basilean, the kingdom, to Israel, to Israel? Remember
Right.
the dative,
The dative.
Is the keywords for dative are to, for, in, or with,
Mhm.
and sometimes by. Okay. And you remember what his answer was to that question?
It's not for you to know. Only the Father knows
Yeah,
the time.
yeah, I like that answer. We're always trying to figure out when it's
I
going to
know,
happen.
and I just like I got the. It's not for you to know.
Okay. We still have time if you want to keep on going.
Sure. Let me have a stab at this, even if
Do
it's
so.
bad. That's my pronunciation is horrid, but I'll make
Well,
an
let's
attempt.
read it together.
Hati,
Hate.
hate.
Hati with an
Yeah, I'm
iota
sorry.
is
I know. I'm sorry. I apologize.
hate
Hate
haiesus en
in
tais synagogais ton iudaion edidasken epi panti to sabbato hoi parasaioi ep eroton tini exousia ekenus tus Lagus, lale.
All right. So I said when, and we put this
Mhm.
together. I didn't write it out in the right order for English, so bear with me.
That's all right.
When Jesus, so let's see, Jesus is the nominative here. The verb is teaching.
Mhm.
Jesus was teaching. So when Jesus was teaching in and I just said the assemblings, and I recognize that would be the
Synagogue.
synagogues, but
Yeah.
I just said in the assemblings of the Jews.
Okay.
Now I'm looking at this on each Sabbath.
Okay.
And that was a little complicated because I'm looking at what does epi mean and all these things that it could mean. And I'm thinking, well,
Yeah.
and I have here aponti, all can also mean each. And I'm thinking the Sabbaths, what's he doing with all the Sabbaths and all? And I came into that. I got on each Sabbath.
That's how I did it too.
The Pharisees, let me see here. Sorry, they are in the nominatives, or possibly, no, it's not likely. Nominative plural.
Right.
Jesus the Pharisees were asking. So this is actually in a simple order. The Pharisees were asking.
Now here's a case where that epi could strengthen it to demanding.
Sure. Yeah, I see that. What authority he was speaking those with, and we would really say with what authority.
Okay.
We need an extra word in there. With what authority he was speaking those words.
Okay.
Is that
now the tense of lale, what did you get for that?
I'm sorry, he is speaking.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I actually wrote he is speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. The Greeks do put it in the present tense.
I understand it's a narrative and
we would
tense.
change it to the
Yeah.
past tense
Yeah.
because when we have a situation of indirect speech, it's reporting what was said. It's not the direct quote.
I understand.
Okay. You shift it back in time.
I'm arbitrarily doing these things. I'm sorry.
Okay, you
I'm
want to
not
do the
sure
next
that.
one?
Sure. This is the other one that was made up.
Mhm.
Let's see. These men. Okay, wait a minute. Hold on. Why am I looking at this now? Drawing over. Give me a second here. The men. Why do I have boy? I got who or what? Those. What am I doing? Because I'm thinking this weird here. I think it should be like those men teaching the word.
No,
No, they were hard. Hold on a minute. Give me a second.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What am I
Take it
doing?
slowly.
Teaching. So the verb is didaskusin,
That's right.
which is teaching, and it's present tense, I believe.
Yes.
Active.
What person or number did you get for that? I think maybe one of the
What did I do
hangups
wrong
you
here?
have, Dave, is
No,
that
where's my
third word.
What? Yeah. What did I do with that? And I've got that or
That's a relative pronoun.
who or that, right? That too.
Yeah. Who?
Who?
The men who.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know why. I'm tired, Carl. And I had this earlier, and I'm just looking at it and staring at it, thinking, what is going on? The men who are teaching the word of God.
Yes.
Sorry, and I know this because I think this is actually kind of funny. This is a funny one. He's got a sense of humor. The men who are teaching the word of God, were they not? And this is so. The verb here is being taught. Were being taught, right? Isn't it?
Yes, it's passive.
It's
onto. The onto
right.
ending tells you it's passive.
Yes, so I have that passive and it's imperfect. So were being taught.
Mhm.
So I have here they, and they have a not under un, I mean under mea is not. So were they not being taught to preach? That's the infinitive. And
Mhm.
in, and this is a really weird thing here. In, and what do I do with polo? And I looked at all the possible things, and the next one is time. So
Yes.
I'm thinking it's saying in a long time, and I think this is a joke, meaning not to preach long messages is really what
Oh,
he's. I think.
well,
I think that's.
I didn't take it that way, but that I like that.
That's how I took it
I,
because I don't know what quite to do with preaching in a long time
well, yeah, I
or in a lot of times. I'm
yeah,
not sure what this means.
in much time is the literal,
Right.
but I changed it to for a long time.
Well, okay.
Uh,
Yeah, I didn't mess with the preposition because I'm not quite sure. It's a strange statement that doesn't quite translate. I'm going, what is this? And I think,
oh,
yeah, for a long time, not to preach for a long time.
well,
Yeah.
but I didn't understand it to mean what you're
I
saying,
think that's
lengthy messages.
I think they're preaching too long. I think
Yeah.
he's got a sense of humor.
But I took it, they weren't being taught to preach um, for, for a long time, not
like they weren't to
they weren't.
they weren't for they were taught a long time before they were taught to
Yeah,
preach.
that's how
Okay, I
took
get
it.
it. Yeah, no, I think he's got a sense of
Yeah,
humor.
I do too. Lengthy messages. Yeah, I like that. It's like the preacher that got up there and first thing he did when he got into the pulpit was to take his watch off and set it down. And the visitor said to the member, what does that mean? He said, it doesn't mean a thing.
Okay.
Well, okay. We got, you want to go a little farther?
Sure, we can try,
Okay.
Carl, as long as you all have
I'll work on
patience
this one.
to do this one.
Ha de uk ethelen. There's that imperfect of thelo. Apen,
Yep, right.
apen de te gunaiki to kuriu autu kurias mu gnoske di ema uden into oiko autu kai panta hasa estin auto edoken estas keras mu tota pos poieso ta brema to ran tuto. Question mark.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, this is taken from Genesis 39, story of Joseph. Okay, Ada uk ethelen, and he, ha is the one, or but is probably better, but the one, or but he, not was willing, but he was not willing, comma, and he said, apen de, and he said to the woman of the Lord of him, of his Lord, to the wife of his Lord. The Lord of me, or the master of me, not does know with me nothing in the house of him. In other words, he's not, I chose another word about for gnoske. His footnote, I am aware, I am concerned. You can kind of see how gnosko, meaning know, in this context could be concerned or.
Yeah, I think I've
So
seen a
concerned,
translation
yeah.
that actually translated it no, which was interesting. but
My Lord, or yeah, my Lord is not concerned with me. Is that how I did it?
or because of me.
Not concerned. Oh, on account of me. Yeah,
Sure, yeah.
on account of me about nothing or anything in his house. And all things, whatever is to him, or whatever belongs to him.
So help me with this part right here.
Okay,
So auto, that's dative, right?
dative, yes. And the
Okay.
key word for dative here,
So you're saying that's
I lost my place.
you're at usa estin auto.
Yeah, there it is. Okay.
Um,
And hasa is the plural of hasas.
yes, I looked this up and I thought it meant something like great.
Oh, no, it's not that.
What is it?
Hasas means uh, uh, as many as, all things as many as, or whatever, as many as. Hanta hasa, all things as many as, or all things whatever. Uh, and remember the neuter plural subject, that crazy construction where the Greeks thought of plurals as a unit,
Right.
and they give it a singular verb.
Right.
Is, we would say, all things whatever are auto, to him or for him or belonging to him.
Oh, all right. I don't know why I didn't
Everything that
connect
belongs to him is
Okay, and
it's
probably messing up USA really didn't help.
hasa.
Hasa didn't help.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
think we've had that in our vocabulary.
Yeah. Okay.
All things, whatever belong to him, he has given into the hand of me, or into my hand. Tata, then, post is how I will do the rhema. Now, footnote 11,
Or will I do
rhema
maybe?
can be translated as thing. Yeah, rhema is a saying normally, but here it's a thing.
Yeah,
How then can I, or will I do the thing, the evil one, this? How then will I do this evil thing? Okay, I got a note here. The word rhema from the Hebrew influence is often translated thing, matter, and event. And I've got 5 references where that's the case.
yeah. That's also in the lexicon.
It is,
The
okay.
analytical lexicon describes that.
In our,
No, I don't know if it's in there. It's in the
that lexicon,
lexicon.
yeah, analytical
Yeah.
lexicon.
It
Yeah.
does describe it in there that way.
Mhm.
Because that's sort of you wouldn't know that.
No, you wouldn't. Is that satisfactory? Uh,
Drew, you good?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's-
I'm actually sort of happy about how much I can follow along with this.
Well, I'm happy too if you are. One more.
Okay.
Kai erota autan ha basilus kruphios apen estin lagos parakuriou kai apen estin.
This one's not hard. Can I
Is
take
it
a
hard
shot?
for you?
No, this one's not hard.
You want to do it then?
Sure. And he was asking the king. Oh,
Wait a minute.
well, wait a minute. Was him. And the king was asking him.
There you go.
Yeah, the noun is the king. nominative case. The king was asking him secretly
Mhm.
to say if it is a word from the Lord, and he said it is.
We might change that if to whether.
Sure.
Yeah, very good. Now that word kruphios, that's an adverb. Crypto, kappa, rho, upsilon, tau, omega, means hidden or secret.
Is
We
this
get-
the root of our crypto?
That's right. Or encryption,
Mm-hmm.
or crypt. A
Oh,
crypt is where you
right,
hide
sure,
a body. Where you-
sure.
yeah,
Oh, is that right?
yeah.
Hmm.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
What's that?
That actually makes a lot of sense.
So
It does, yeah.
So cryptography is the study of crypts.
Encryption.
I know. It's the study of
You're
crypts.
right.
Oh, crypts.
Sure. Yep, that's
Whoa.
exactly how etymology works.
Okay. All right. Well, I think maybe that's a good place to stop. We got pretty
Okay.
far tonight,
Thank you.
and I think, do you all feel pretty good about it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll finish this next time and go on to the review of chapters 15 and 20 in the workbook, and I'd like to assign that for you to do as much as you can for next week. And there's a section at the end that I think is really neat. It's a section of John chapter 12. And to me, it really shows us how far we've come, because he's not giving us that many words that we don't know yet.
Okay.
And we're to the point now where we can do a lot of translation on our own.
Cool.
So, can we stop the recording? And
Yes, I might be able to.
good night, everybody.